Still watching Business Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu on Wednesday presented the 2025 budget of restoration titled Securing Peace, Rebuilding Prosperity to a joint session of the National Assembly. The president in his address said the budget aligns with his administration's renewed hope agenda and underscores its commitment to stabilizing the economy, fostering peace, and laying a foundation for sustainable prosperity. Two keywords: economic and sustainable prosperity. Now, to take a look at this, we have public affairs analyst Mr. Bola Tinubu is joining us via Zoom. It's good to have you join us on Business Nigeria. But first, let's start with this entire figure, right? Very ambitious, some persons will say. But what do you make of the spending plan compared to what we had in 2024?
It's not much of a difference. Well, let's agree it's ambitious, 47.9 trillion. But when you look at how it has been cut and diced, it doesn't look as if it's as big as it appears. Don't forget that out of this 47.9, a whopping 16 trillion is for debt servicing. So we're left with whatever is the difference after we have removed debt servicing. And there will still be more debt also to finance the deficit. But it's a good platform. How we are able to execute with the necessary level of discipline will count a lot for us. In my opinion, we have not really taken the budget as a true planning document. It is more or less an authority to spend. That has been our approach to it. So let's assume that this particular year, we will actually treat it as what it is, which is a planning document, and approach it with the right level of discipline for maximum effect.
Are you still with me? I seem to be having some connection issues there.
I'm here.
All right. Okay, so if you take a look at the allocation, right? The president focused on, we're going to just take a look at three, right? Security, education, infrastructure, and of course, healthcare is also part of those sectors they actually focused on. Among this, some persons would think that really, can this budget solve the economic challenges we have right now on our hands?
Well, it may not solve it, but it can provide a good pedestal for us to build on. So we can't even grow the economy without security. If you call in 10 analysts today to talk about inflation in Nigeria, by the time you start talking of inflation, you will realize that food inflation is the chief driver of the inflation figure that we have. And when you talk about food, then the matter of insecurity will come in. We've seen numbers about how much Nigerians have spent on ransom in a year. That amount alone is more than the combined annual budget of about 34 states put together. So there is no doubt that there cannot even be any economic progress at all without solving the security problem. So putting money aside for security is very important for the economy, because without security, the economy is going nowhere. Then infrastructure is another very critical pillar for economic development. There's a Chinese saying that says, if you want to get rich, start by building road. So it is the recognition of the fact that without necessary infrastructure, without the necessary connectivity of various segments of our economy, which infrastructure will help us to do, and they come in all forms and shapes anyway, without those things, we cannot fire the turbines of our economy the way it is supposed to be. Something as basic as the fact that over 40% of the food that we produce get damaged, they get rotten annually. And we are starving in the midst of all of that because there are no storage facilities, because the connectivity, the road connecting the areas of production to the areas of consumption are horrible. And then all the other things that has to do with movement of food to where they are consumed. And there are a lot of these things are infrastructure issues. So if we don't address that, we will not be able to address food. If you don't address food, we won't be able to address inflation. If you don't address inflation, you can't address the economy as a whole. So they are all intertwined in one way or the other.
What do you think, would be the best way to implement in this budget? If you take a look at the president says that the 2025 budget hopes to drive inflation from 34.6% to 15% in 2025, while the exchange rate will further improve, approximated to 1,700 to a dollar. That's to 1.5 to a dollar. Then you talked about oil production as well. But do you really think that, if you would suggest, how do you think we should really go about implementing this budget, aside what you've seen in the year 2024, right?
Well, it will require a lot of discipline on our side. There is already a little bit of problem with our balance sheet, which is why we are seeing the fact that the amount that goes into debt service is almost 50% of the total revenue that we target for the year. So you get 34 trillion revenue, and then you use 16 trillion to service debt. So part of what we will need to do is to see how we can begin to transfer away from what is becoming a huge debt burden, debt servicing body, debt burden on our finances. That is a very critical part. Then the measure, whatever you want to be able to manage, you must be able to measure it. So in all areas in which we seek specific deliverable, we must measure and hold the people who are supposed to deliver on those deliverables accountable. And where they are not living up to the expectation, we should gladly be able to shake hands with them, thank them for their service, and let them go. Find someone else who understands what the vision is and has the discipline to carry through with the vision and make it happen for us. So discipline will be a very strong factor that will help us in achieving what we seek to achieve in 2025. I think the assumption about exchange rate, I think, is reasonable. It appears as if going from 1.7 to 1.5 might not be an impossibility, considering the transparency that has come into the monetary side of things. And I believe that the transparency from that axis will continue to improve over time. That will help a great deal. We now have to be able to support that process with fiscal initiative that will consolidate and stabilize whatever monetary policy is able to deliver. So in this 2025, the fiscal side of things and the monetary side of things must handshake more strongly than they did in the current in the past 1.5 years or thereabout, so that we can have more fruit for the labor that is coming from both ends. There's a synergy. When they work together properly, a synergy is delivered, which will help us dramatically. Some other assumptions are a bit maybe over-ambitious. I'm not sure we can get to 15% in inflation reduction over a 12-month period. But we sure can move away from the 34.6 that we are. We can probably get into the 20s, early 20s, if we work hard at it.
Of course, if we work at it. But we see that the Senate, of course, have gone on recess, particularly for the Christmas break. So if you take a look at how visible really is the year-to-year, that's the January to December kind of budget run. Can the budget really run from January to December, just like we had talked it will run? Since now the lawmakers have gone on recess, do you think that would affect the implementation in whatever form?
No. The recess of the lawmakers has nothing to do with budget implementation. The segment of the government that has responsibility for execution of the budget is actually the executive. So the lawmakers have done their bit by passing the bill into a law. It is now left for the executive to run with it. However, there is a recurring issue that we have to watch out for. We've seen how budgets are being rolled one into another. In this current year, for example, I think we probably had about 3 budgets that we were running and combining at the same time. In 2025, I think the current year's budget is still going to be allowed to run for about 6 months into 2025 as well. So which means even 2025, we're likely to have 2 budgets running. There might be a supplementary budget again, which will have like 3 budgets. So these are the things that are beginning to speak to us that we need to take our budgetary issues more seriously. Budget is a planning document. It is not an authority. It's not just an authority to spend. Once we have at the back of our mind that it's a planning document, our approach will be different, and the discipline we bring to the table will also be different. All these issues of multiple budgets will reduce over the period. I think we can run with a single budget in a year if we're serious about it.
Wait to see that happen. Public Affairs Analyst, Mr. Bola Tinubu, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks for having me.